only going to affect that one component. If I reboot that server, they can still have the file shares, email, and that kind of stuff. So
Sure, and then on top of that, if your DNS is working properly, the end user won't see a difference.
yeah. So uh, the users that we have, I think most of the companies that we service, if they've got more than 30 users, they normally have two servers.
Okay.
Um, Now that's not to say that every company needs two servers if they have 30 users, especially if they're not doing much. If they're just using it for a file server and they really don't have that much. I've seen some companies with 30 users, all they do is Word documents. That's all they do.
Now, let me ask you this: are your clients? What are the sum of your bigger clients as far as size wise?
Well, we've got quite a range. The biggest client we support has offices worldwide, and their headquarters are here.
Okay.
Um, and they range, I think the largest, and so we have a lot of companies that maybe have headquarters here and two or three other offices somewhere else around the country. We have some, it's hard to tell. We don't have really, I think if we looked at just the ones that are local with only offices here
Mm-hmm.
and not other offices, maybe 30 users, 20 to 30 users is average.
Okay, that's good.
But some have offices all over the country,
Oh,
some have
sure.
all over the
And
world.
the only reason I bring that up is because you'll find out that you deal with a business that has 5 to 10, and you deal with a business that has 30 or even more. The game changes like a little bit because you have to approach things a little bit differently and how you want to do things.
Yeah, I'll get calls from somebody in another country. They don't speak English.
Okay,
And
yeah.
unfortunately, I only speak English, which makes the support call a little hard.
Hold on. Are you telling me your iPhone 4S, like your Siri can't translate that call for you?
I haven't had to talk to one of them lately, but they know now they have to get a translator. When they're calling us, they
Mm-hmm.
need to have a translator. So the translator's on the phone, and that's who I'm talking to. And they talk to that person and they translate it. So that has to have happened. We had to do that a few times because when they call without a translator, I can understand one or two words, but I'm not going to be able to help you.
Right.
So it's fun when you have a larger company. And then if you have all these different locations, you having to do a lot of different things. You probably have VPN. So it's a completely different game. Even when you're just one separate office, it changes things because then you got to worry about remote access. Where is the data going to live? If it's can it live in the remote office or should it be the main office? It's a lot different. So
Yep. Very true, man. Cool.
so we got a little bit of time. I can talk about one more thing that happened
Okay.
this week. So, and this might be a common thing. Get a call from a client, the internet's slow. And that's a common complaint when you're doing work for businesses. The internet's slow.
Okay.
Now, I know I've talked about WatchGuard once or twice before.
Yes. I love how you worked that word once an episode.
So, and this is a reason for a business class router, and not necessarily WatchGuard. Other business class routers can do this, I'm sure. The first thing when I do, I get a call. The internet's slow. I'm going to start a constant ping to their gateway from my computer,
Okay. Now,
just to see.
yeah. Now, what is it that you look for in a ping?
Well, I'm looking for high ping times, drop packets. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing things in the hundreds or thousands as the response time and drop offs, you know something's wrong.
Yep.
Because normally you're going to get a constant, maybe 35 milliseconds, 34 milliseconds across the internet. And so I just start that right away, just let it run because I want to get a history built up on it. Right away, I can see I'm getting drop packets, I'm getting 3,000 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds. It's all over the place, drop packets. So I log into the router, and it is slow because the connection's slow. And I'm looking for, in the case of the WatchGuard, I can go look and see what's using bandwidth down to if it's HTTP traffic, if it's mail, I can see what's using how much bandwidth in a nice little graph.
Can
Real,
you can you detect what the source IP is as far as which client PC?
yes.
Oh, sweet.
It'll show down. It'll show down to the local IP of the client, and it'll show me what the destination is on the internet and what port it's using. And it'll show me an overall graph. So in this case, they have a 6 meg circuit up and down. So I can say, show me, I can scale the graph to 6 megs, and I can see per protocol how much traffic is being used. Or if I want to just look at total. Now I saw them going up to as much as eight megs. So I'm thinking, well, you must be saturating your line because I see a lot of Pandora. I see a lot of MSNBC, Fox Sports streaming.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, kill all of that. So that's easy. And at least in the WatchGuard, they subscribe to what's called Web Blocker. So Web Blocker service, I can block all these. I just block them all. So
Now, as soon as you did that, did it just drop down the saturation?
well, I did that. I rebooted it because I wanted to clear the connections. I rebooted it. I'm still watching my ping locally. Of course, it went away for a little while and came back. And I looked, the saturation was gone. I got the bandwidth down to roughly 300K total going out. And I'm sure that people were trying to type in Pandora.com again and wondering why they couldn't. So there's almost no traffic at this time going out of the router. But the ping times were still high and still dropping off. So I thought, well, I think there's something wrong with your ISP. And they have 4 T1s bonded together.
Wow.
I said, I think you've got a problem with your ISP. Now, to test this, now one thing I do when I get a slow connection also, I disable the SMTP service. I just stop the SMTP service if they're hosting their own mail.
And that is because?
Because if somebody sent out the latest funny video to 200 people, it could be killing the bandwidth. Now, I killed the SMT service before I looked into the router logs.
Okay.
Now, but if you don't have these logs, just kill the SMTP service anyway. See if the connection gets better. And then it'll happen right away. If it's the SMTP service, because I've done this in places that didn't have nice routers where I couldn't really do much. I started the ping from my computer, killed the SMTP, and the pings went from like 3,000 and drop-offs back down to normal with no drop-offs. You re-enable SMTP, it goes back. Now this is caused because somebody sent a bunch of things out to a bunch of people. One, it's going out, and a lot of it's coming back in because it's too large for somebody to accept. Which is again is why you set limits on inbound and outbound mail on your Exchange server.
Even I'm sorry, Matt, because this happens all the time. Even if the president or the owner says, "I want no limitation," they need to understand the other end that's receiving that email might drop it because they have a limitation on what they can receive.
Yes. Oh. Yes. So just because you can send doesn't mean they can receive it.
Yes.
So if they can receive it, it's going to come back. So if you kill SMTP services and it goes back to normal, all you can do is re-enable it and let it finish.
Mm-hmm.
You tell them it'll be normal hopefully by tomorrow. And then...
Right. Or like Matt has stated, install a Service Pack 3 last week.
And then talk to them about putting limits on mail and explain to them that email is not a file transfer protocol. It's email. It's just like you don't shove a fruitcake into a letter and try and mail it. It's just not meant for that.
I like that analogy. Why didn't I meet you like 10 years ago?
It's holidays, fruitcake. So, and they usually get frustrated and then they say, fine, put the limits. But in this case, it wasn't SMTP because I killed it right away, just as the first thing I try, and then it wasn't them. So it was almost no traffic, and at this time I knew there was no traffic. Once I killed it, the company was serving actually their Thanksgiving dinner to employees, so no one was on their computer. So when I reset the connections, nobody was getting back on.
That would explain the 300K that was being used. Okay.
So there was nothing going on, but still dropping off. So said you have to call your ISP. She called the ISP, and of course they say, well, no one else is complaining of problems. So then she tells me it's not the ISP. I said, well, now what did the ISP say? And she goes, well, they said no one else is complaining of problems. I said, well, that doesn't mean that there isn't a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It could be only your circuit or one of your T1s that's a problem. I said, if they told you that, that means they didn't even check. So you need to call them back and have them check. They went through this for 2 days. 2 days. Finally, the ISP came back and said, oh, we found a problem with one of your T1s.
Gee, look at that.
So that was funny because she actually emailed me, you were right. It was like 10 o'clock at night. You were right. Problem with one of our T1s. One point, Matt. And I reply back, only 1 point. I mean, come on.
Only 1 point. That's true. And with ISPs, you know, it's kind of funny. We had a situation where, well, my buddies had a situation where the ISP was saying it's not our fault, and then I said, well, go ahead and do a trace route to their equipment, and of course, in the trace route, it dropped off on their end, and then he submitted that to the ISP, and they went, oh, I guess we should look into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. ISPs, the first call almost always will say it's not our fault. Don't let an ISP think that it's your fault and wasting all kind of time searching around, because it's not. It's not. And now in this case, if the ISP